Welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Elizabeth Eve King.
And I'm Andrea Goyan. Elizabeth and I used to do comedy together back when we were 19.
A while ago, and we lost touch.
But a little bit ago, we found each other and discovered
that I'd become a painter, a writer, a performer, an animal lover, a Pilates teacher, and a biologist.
Wait, I'm a painter, performer, writer, animal lover, Pilates teacher, and well, okay, I'm not a biologist, but we're
long lost friends.
And we're both speculative fiction writers.
And I've been lucky enough to publish a MetaStellar.
MetaStellar, for those of you who don't know, is an online magazine that publishes original science fiction, horror, and fantasy. There's a link below, and you can check it out, and please subscribe for books, stories, writing tips, and more. So today, we're really delighted to have Paul Draper join us. So Paul is a freelance writer. He's written screenplays for a number of short films across a wide range of genres, several of which have been produced commercially for companies like BBC Bitesize. He's written and directed animation, comedy, and horror shorts, and he's currently working on a novel and a full-length screenplay. And this year, he also published a dark fantasy short story collection, Black Gate Tales, which we're going to talk about. Paul also likes to help mentor and moderate a large number of local and online writing groups. So we're just so thrilled to have you here, Paul. Thank you for coming.
Yes, welcome, Paul. But first, before you tell us about your writing, you have to show us your pets.
Okay, I live on a top floor flat here in currently rainy south coast of England, so I don't have the cat or dog that I would really like to have, which I will be getting once my big blockbuster sells, but I do have a small Grogu from The Mandalorian. I know you guys are sci-fi fans, and he's pretty good company up until the point I get a cat.
No, he's really cute. And does he sit on your desk? Because my cat sits on my desk on top of everything.
He sort of sits underneath the TV and watches me and my wife of an evening. And I think he moves around slightly as well. So we're both slightly weirded out by him. But, you know, he seems benign enough.
For now. It always starts benign.
So we wanted to see if we could, get some hints on your self-publishing journey. So first of all, I have to change my virtual background to represent your book because it's so cool. So there we go. Now we have got Paul's virtual background. So Paul, can you talk to us a little bit about what made you decide to self-publish, first of all?
Well, I've written a lot of short stories over the past few years, particularly the last 5 or 6 years. I've gone into kind of overdrive really with my short story and flash fiction writing. And I've ended up with about 40 or 50 short stories in that period. A lot of them have come from competition writing or other means of just producing it, sitting down one day and just coming up with something, or having an idea that struck me that I want to write out on any one particular day. And I'm not really a regular submitter to magazines like some of my writing colleagues are. So I wondered what to do with it. The general wisdom is that if you try and submit short stories to traditional publishers, you're not going to get very far unless you're a well-known person. So I thought I'd delve into the world of indie publishing and just see if I could do it myself. So that's where the idea came from of doing the book.
Well, and so when you first started, how did you decide which 14 or how many, because you've got 14 stories. There we go, in the book. It's a ghost story book. So
yeah, it is, definitely.
But how you picked the stories, and then also how you picked the person who also did the your illustrations, because they're fantastic too. So
they're lovely. Well, to your first question, obviously, if you've got that many short stories, they're going to be various themes and various topics. So what I wanted to do with this one was to do something that's quite close to my heart, which is a traditional, fairly creepy kind of short story where it gets under your skin a little bit. So I was able to cut away quite a few of the stories, and I do write comedy as well. So most of those kind of went out by the wayside early on. So I ended up with a list of about sort of 18 to 20, and then just went through them and just looked at all the feedback I've had from competition judges, from peer groups, from beta groups, just to see where I thought the strongest section of stories was. I actually had 15, and I sent them all to the editor that I found through REEDSY.com. It's a very good editing collaboration service. And he picked out one saying, I just don't think this one fits in. So I agreed with Robert, my editor, that was to go to one side, which I've since put on Medium as just a standalone story, and ended up with this 14. And I, whilst they're on different topics and actually in different countries, they're not all English. Some of them, one of them set in France in the Second World War, one of them's in Syria. What draws them together is a sort of general uneasy tone of something's going on outside the frame that we can't quite see. So they seem to have a commonality that I quite liked.
You've had, I know you've had some really wonderful reviews on this. Was that something that you had to go look for? How did that happen? Because that's hard for a self-publisher.
It is hard. And I'll tell you what, Andrea, the first thing I did was I tried to sit down and learn before any of this happened. What I did actually very first off was to get the stories into the shape that I wanted them in and then send them to the editor. So in the December of last year, they were being edited. So that was a block of time where I couldn't really do much about what I was doing with this project, but I could go away and learn about how to do marketing or promotion or get the book so that it's known out there. I think we all know that you can self-publish and then just, your family will like it and your friends will like it. And then it can go as far as that and no further. So there are two particular people that I found interesting. One was a lady called Joanna PENN, who writes the creativepenn.com. A lot of people know about Joanna. She was absolutely brilliant. Went through a lot of her material and learned from it. And the second one was Adam Croft at the Indie Author Mindset. Together, these two people really, with all of their modular training, taught me step by step what I should be doing and how I should be going about this. I collected together a lot of peer reviews that I'd had from people who I know who have published. So that helped me with my Amazon page anecdotes. But beyond that, I advertised through Facebook and Amazon advertising, and then try to get to book bloggers as well and just sort of say, hello, this is me, I'm doing this thing, would you like to read it? Here's a free copy. And just sort of pounded the streets in a sort of virtual way to try and get the book in front of people. I think it did help that it was very, very short stories, and the entire collection is only 22,000 words, so it's novella length as a book. And people could get through it without too much effort. But I did find that people, once they'd read the first one or two, came back to me and said, I went through them all in 2 days or 1 day or something. So yeah, that was quite nice. So I've basically tried to capitalize on the feedback I've got, and where there's a quote, when I can use it, I'll use it.
Yes. Yeah, I've read it and I love it. And because I also has some of the stories feel kind of retro.
Yes.
That makes sense. I mean, they have a kind of old style to them. Some of them feel very modern, but it's a very, I don't know, it's a classic kind of collection to me. It's got a lot of classic feel to it.
And those are the stories that I quite like to read. I mentioned in the introduction that authors like Algernon Blackwood and H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe and William Hope Hodgson. These are all authors that I've absolutely loved reading, but they are quite wordy as well. So what I wanted to do was to take the spirit and the approach of these people who never just flung blood at the page. That was never their horror style. They would get the skin crawling up the back of your neck, but they'd often do it in a very, very wordy, antiquarian, old style way that I think the modern reader, maybe you've got to really like it to go into that. So I tried to sort of do an abbreviated version of that spirit
Oh, I think you did it. I mean, several of the stories, they do have that kind of poish feel to them, but you're right. I mean, what is your longest story in here?
The longest one is the one at the end. Is called Snick. That's about, even that is only about 2,500 words. So it's not long. I mean,
Right.
if you look at a classic, a regular short story going up to really 5,000, 6,000 words, 2.5 is still pretty short for a short story. Actually, I've had a lot of people have told me that Snick is the one that they like the best. My editor really liked that one. Anyone with an aversion to spiders tends to hate it because it's about spiders. But the shortest one is under 1,000, so it's sort of 850. So yeah, short.
Yeah. So how did you find your illustrator? And it's, again, such a great choice for this book.
The illustrator is somebody I know. It's a fellow called Philip Kingsbury, and he runs the Wooden Spoon Press, which is in a beautiful village in the Cotswolds called Malmesbury. It's a really lovely, picturesque part of England. And he's such a gentle soul, and he generally does children's books or nature drawings. He's a bit of a sort of Bob Ross character, if you know Bob Ross. So I approached him and I said, look, I want a book cover done. I'd love you to do it. Are you interested in it? So he was quite excited about the idea of doing something a bit darker. So we worked together, and it was a lovely collaborative process. He did some sketches, came back to me. I said, well, could we have a bridge here and a bit of a focal point here, and then something in the distance that can make us think, I wonder what's going on in that thing over there, and that's the cottage. And some trees. I like the sort of tree drawings. And then he would cut the whole thing. So it's not a digital piece of art. It's an actual wood engraving that he then scanned in and then colorized using computer graphics. So it's a real work of love from him. And I adore it. And actually, it gave the book the turbocharge at the beginning of the sales that I needed, because so many people came to me and said, I just love this cover, as well as the small illustrations that are inside the book, one for each story.
Yeah, they're beautiful too. And it's really neat to hear that you got to collaborate, because that's not, I mean, I guess that's part of the joy of self-publishing, is you can have that experience rather than having a big publisher say, here's your cover, like it or not.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
And your title usually.
Yeah. I think it all knits together as being the impact thing, isn't it? What I wanted was something where you could go into a bookshop and you could pick it up and not really know that it was a self-published book. You shouldn't really be able to tell, really. It's just a book. But it was lovely with that. I mean, I do like collaborating with other people. I've been freelancing now for about 6 years, and able to give a cross-field pass to another soul who's trying to also do freelancing work and some budget is just a really lovely thing to feel like you can do.
So did you run into any problems? Because you said you'd like to be able to see it at a bookstore where someone can't tell. With the Amazon platform, did you publish through Amazon, or is it just available? Because I know people run into problems with putting their books in bookstores if they've published on Amazon.
Yes, that's right, actually. And it's one of the key decisions you have to make when you first do self-publishing, is whether you're going to stay within the Amazon ecosystem or whether you're going to go wide. When you do print on demand, which this book is, i.e. there are no stocks until somebody orders one, then it's printed and delivered to them. You can go wide, but booksellers won't stock from Amazon. They just don't like to do it. Amazon don't offer the same discount system that you can get through other book printers. So I did print on demand with Amazon, and I also did it with a company called Ingram Spark. And Ingram Spark feed through other services called Lightning Source and Gardeners, and those are the catalogs that booksellers go to. So if somebody walks into a shop and says, I would like Blackgate Tales or any other book, they'll go to their Gardeners catalog and see whether it's available to order through Ingram. Ingram will then print at a discount, send it to the bookseller. The bookseller can then sell it at the retail price and make some money off it. And that's the way the relationship works. But if you only go with Amazon with your printed version, you won't get it ever into Barnes and Noble or Waterstones or any of those other shops. With Kindle, obviously a lot of people are doing things through ebook now. The decision to go wide or stay just within Amazon is a very important one. You can do Kindle Unlimited, which I'm sure we all have experience of, where you can subscribe to Amazon and get books for zero. As long as you've got 5 in your library, you can read them. And you get a cut of the subscription pot, the overall subscription pot. But if you go wide, you can't go into Kindle Unlimited, but you can start selling your ebook in other places like Google and Apple Books and all these other different places. So I've done that as well, which is a harder marketing task, but at the same time, it sows the seeds of being able to be available as an author wherever people want to buy you, which is quite important, I think, if you're trying to build your profile and eventually get it so that people know who you are, which is kind of where I'm trying to be, really.
Right.
That was a very long answer, sorry.
No. It's I mean, it's such a complicated thing to learn about. And I mean, I've read a lot and listened to a lot of people talk about it, but it's still unwinding in my brain because I want to self-publish. Yeah. So anything that you would like to, when you think back, that you would like to advise people to absolutely do first, or to steer clear of, any mistakes you made that you just want to sort of share?
Yes. What I would advise to anyone is just get the basics right. Make sure that you have a well-written story and don't just show it to your family, and they will tell you it's fantastic, obviously, but
you don't know my family.
Well, maybe some family members are harder critics than others. So get that right, get your editing and proofing right, employ somebody to do that. That investment will pay off for you. You can read a book and then just find 7 typos in a page, and it's just such an easy thing to fix if you get the right people in. Don't rely completely on yourself for that stuff, because it just becomes invisible to you as a writer after a while. The words just go a little bit opaque. Get your book cover done. Invest in that. People do judge a book by its cover. It's just a fact of life. And just line all your ducks up in a row and run it like a business. Look at what your budgeting is. Boring, but get a spreadsheet together, look at what you're spending, look at what your income will be, and just try and start in the right way, and then you'll end up carrying on in the right way is my idea.
Right. Great advice. Really helpful. Elizabeth, did you have any questions?
No. I mean, that's really, so but this, before you started doing this, were you writing longer things?
Well, I'm one of these people, and you may well have had other interviewees like this, who's just always been writing. At school, I wrote all the way through. I did university, I did psychology at university, and then I got a job. I worked for a big company. I did technology for quite a long time, but as a hobbyist, I was writing whilst doing that as well. When I left that work in the mid 2000, sort of 14, 15, that's when I thought, look, this thing keeps coming along. I need to either make a real go of doing this as a thing, or it will always be just this thing that I've done in the background, and that's that. So a gradual process of percolating through to being my main activity. And I can talk a little bit about the idea of being a universal writer a bit later on, but the idea of just looking at all the avenues that you can deploy this particular passion and skill into it's good to look along the horizon and just see, right, well, okay, now I'm here. What can I do with this thing? So a journey like we've all had with this.
Right. And different lengths of journey.
For lengths. Well, actually, I'm planning 2 novels at the moment, 2. One of which is mooted to be part of a trilogy, and I've actually got that back into planning now, because I've come up with some new ideas for it. I am actually quite a structure person. I do like to have a helicopter view of what I'm writing before I get going on it. There's a few things. I mean, some people are true pantsers. They'll sit down and they'll just charge away and see where it goes, which is fine. I think you can do that with maybe shorter fiction, but with longer stuff, I do think you do need that sense of structure. I use Scrivener so I can look at the chapters and figure out where all my planning points are. But planning a novel is a new thing to me. So I'm trying to take it carefully and make sure that I allow myself enough flexibility within the structure to be creative within the structure. because if you just planned the whole thing to death, then you might as well write a textbook or an instruction manual for something. So in answer to your question, the longer work I've done is mainly screenplay work. I've come up with a few speculative feature-length screenplays, which are very long, 90 to 100-page screenplays. For for actual prose writing, I think the longest I've gone is 7,000 or 8,000 on a short story. So the idea of tackling a 70 to 90,000 novel is something that I'm learning about at the moment, but I'm keen to try and get it right.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I mean, it's the way to do it, is to write a lot of shorts and a lot of shorts and get that whole thing almost in your head, plot, and because then it's filling it out. I mean, it's.
Yeah. I don't know how people do novels straight off the bat. I've almost treated my short story writing as a period of apprenticeship towards a novel, whilst really wanting to do good service to some of the stories that are coming out. And I want to do a Blackgate Tales 2 and have another collection of these come out at some point, rather than just have them sitting in a drive somewhere. But I do feel that it has been training to a certain extent to get me towards this longer piece of work.
Oh, right. I always think, I mean, there are people who just try and write a novel. I think that's crazy, actually.
I think it's also, I do think that they do serve one another, and also short story writing is its own complete animal that
absolutely,
is also an art form. I always worry sometimes when people go, oh, you've got to write short stories. This is not what you were saying, Paul, but that you've got to short stories to become a novelist, and sort of like dismissing the art of short story writing, which I think is very creative, very different.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a massive Ray Bradbury fan, and Ray Bradbury there are 2 volumes of 100+ short stories that he's done, and they're just beautiful, beautiful stories. And they really make you feel something, and the discipline in them is wonderful. There's no way that a short story is just a training ground. But for me, the short story was a lovely way of being able to finish things, complete things, look at structure and go, this was good, or this maybe wasn't quite so good, on my way towards. I don't want to get 3/4 of the way through a novel and feel that. I know you have to redraft no matter what you do, but I don't want to feel that I've completely set off in the wrong direction on a novel.
Well,
and
that's
of course,
true. That's one of the things. I mean, a short story, I mean, maybe you write it in a day, but or a week or a month or whatever, but I mean, you're not going to work probably more than 2 months on a short story. I mean, which is already really crazy, but a book will take you at least a year. So if you really, I mean, I know there are these people, oh, we're going to write a novel in a week, but to me, it's like, you're probably not going to write a really good novel in a week.
No, and this is quite an important point, Elizabeth, because reputation is everything. Once it goes out with your name on it, and people will look at it and go, either, unfortunately, everything is a calling card for you. So, you don't really want to put a novel out there, it not be the best that it can be, and then have people not want to get to your next book, which might be better. So there's a reputational thing as well there, I think.
And then I was going to add, because I'm going to be a geeky person this way, that Robert Boswell, God help me, I hope I have his name right. He has an incredible short story collection, and one of them he took 14 years to write.
Really? Wow.
So obviously it percolated. He couldn't get
How long does it take to read?
It's a long short story, but not 14 years. It's a beautiful story, and I can't grasp the name of it right now, but he is an amazing short story writer, and but it percolated. Like, I think we all probably have some of those. I know I do, stories that I can't quite get right, that have been sitting there in my file for years.
Oh, or my head. Yeah, I have one now that I'm actually really, but also works of literature that have stayed with me. I mean, yes, novels who've changed my life, but short stories too have, had that, A Rose for Emily or something, and I mean, just so many short stories have changed my life. Also, I have to mention it, Ray Bradbury was my mentor, so I was really lucky. I got to read to him and hear him read to me and talk about stories with him. And he was just really, he was so giving to younger writers, and he'd always be there. He said, always say, throw it up in the morning, clean it up in the afternoon, and then get it out there.
Absolutely. I'm so envious that you managed to meet the great man. I mean, I don't think there are that many true pantsers in the world, no, but Ray Bradbury really was one. He would get up in the morning, explode like a bomb, and then pick up the pieces, as you say, and but I mean, his longer works, Dandelion Wine and Something Wicked This Way Comes, just have caught what childhood is like at such an evocative level. It may be an American childhood, but I completely connected with it as a boy growing up in the UK. Yeah, incredible.
It's interesting. I mean, I kind of wonder, because Dandelion Wine calls to a childhood that we all think of, and very American, but also before our times, still. It was like our parents' time or stuff. Whereas, and I wonder, like now young people reading it have such a different, I mean, Ray was horrified when he saw somebody with headphones on, in a different world. So it's just curious to think about. I know his work still translates, to younger people, but it's such a different world suddenly.
I agree with you, Elizabeth. Unfortunately, technology has come in, and there's been an erosion of innocence earlier in childhood, which is, a lot of his stories alluded to certainly Dandelion Wine alluded to an innocence, a sort of almost a Huckleberry Finn style feeling of just learning about the world as you go. And now there are different challenges to childhood, aren't there? But there's still that common spirit of just trying to find things out. I think maybe there's a seed there that is a common thread through time.
And I think you get the humanity, it doesn't matter what time or space or world you put it, because if you can get the human core, it still translates.
Yeah, and in fact, Ray always, he said, I'm not science fiction ever. He said, I'm always science fantasy. I mean, there's really no science in his stuff. His people, whether they're on Mars or wherever, it's just the human story. It's not, some alien bizarro technology.
Well, one of my favorite stories in the Martian Chronicles is the Small Martian. I think it's called The Martian, actually. A young boy, maybe a boy, goes to a human family and becomes what they want him to be. So he becomes the child that they're missing. So that's just a deeply human story of wanting connection, manifestation, kidding yourself that something's in front of you that is different to what it actually is, but everyone was happy with it. So it's a deeply human story. It just happens to be set on Mars with rocket ships around it. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's important. So thank you so much for talking to us and about your journey. I mean, I'm really looking forward to reading your book. I haven't yet had the pleasure, but it's the kind of story I love. I love those old stories, and I love the creepiness and the humanness. So we want to thank you for talking to us. And we usually end with, in fact, we always end with, what's the best thing you learned this week? So I usually start just because, I do. I don't know if I would say this is the best thing, but I think it's really interesting, is that when you're born, babies have about 300 bones at birth. And the flexibility helps move them around so they can get through the birth canal and then start growing up, and then all our bones start coming together, so that when we're grown, we have about 200. So we lose about 200 bones in our development. Or no, 100 bones, sorry. We lose 100.
Yeah, math,
we end with 2.
Math not being our greatest.
Our math is never the greatest.
Math and commas, Elizabeth and I struggle with.
Any grammar at all. Spelling too. No spelling for us.
That's cool. That's pretty interesting. They don't just like blend together. Do you have 2 that? Okay.
They do. They start fusing together, but when you're a baby and stuff, they're shifting, and then as you're growing, they slowly start moving together. So I imagine,
Interesting.
Maybe start baby gymnastics, because think about how many more. It's like, okay, baby, flip.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how many things could go wrong and mess things up along the way there. Excuse me. All right, mine is just a silly personal thing that I was really happy to be a runner-up in the, I'm still on the fence whether it's the Arcanist or Arcanist, their last competition, which was about camp. So it'll be published in another, I don't know, sometime next month or so, maybe 2 months with them. So I was happy about that. That was cool. So that was my good news. Yay.
Congratulations. Yay.
That's great. Shall I chip in with one?
Yes, absolutely.
It was I was going to mention a writing thing, but I won't. 1 in 3 animals in the world is a beetle. Someone told me this week. I don't know whether this is true or not, but that's the thing. I'm going to try and find out whether it is true or not.
Oh, I think it is. There's quite a lot of beetles.
Yeah.
But you know what I found out, that just to be honest, that most, this also seems to me like, is this really true? Not that most animals are parasites, but that most animals are actually parasitoids, the kind of parasite that lay their eggs on an animal and then their babies eat the animal either from inside out or from some other delicious way, but that they're more parasitoids than anything in the world.
You do have to find out if that's true. And what is that thing about, now that we're on creepy things, that thing about how many spiders there are per square, like there are more spiders living around us and underneath us. And I forget the number. It's an extraordinary number of spiders in any given like square mile or square block or house.
Well, Paul, aren't you your last story was all about spiders. Maybe you know this.
It was, yeah. I think this is true. There are a huge amount of spiders around us, and we'll often see them scuttling along skirting boards in the evening. I think if they ever truly get organized, we might be in trouble, but they don't seem to talk to each other very much. So I think we're safe for now.
I think we're safe.
They're good. And they kill a lot of troubling things in our lives for us. So
they're our friends.
Very good friends. All right.
So, and we also want to thank Maria and Alex Korloff. Alex does the amazing job of editing us, and Maria produces us. We couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we couldn't do it. And please go ahead and like this video and leave comments below. We'd love to know what you think. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button so you won't miss any episodes. And if you'd like to, you can support us on Patreon and the page, and all the links are in the description box below. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next time. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for having me, guys.